welcome to the deep dive. You sent us a really remarkable stack of sources this week. It's this philosophical deep dive, but it's disguised as a piece of literary history.
It is.
We're tackling the insights from what's supposedly a recently discovered late manuscript of Marcel Proust. It's called In Search of the Luminous Interval.
And whether this was really written by Proust or not, it really forces you to re-examine the most foundational questions of being.
Right.
How is the self actually constructed? And why does time feel so linear?
And he kicks it off immediately.
He does. The narrator sets the stage with a claim that just flips everything on its head. He says that what we inherit from our ancestors is not consciousness itself, but the capacity for a certain kind of forgetting.
That's the perfect opener, really, because the narrator's mission, and I guess ours in this deep dive, is to do the opposite.
To find what he calls the luminous interval.
Yeah. The truth he thinks is hidden not despite the gaps in our experience, but actually within them.
He'd spent years withdrawing from society, trying to pinpoint where his awareness truly resided.
So what was his starting assumption?
Well, his initial belief was that consciousness was like a single, steady, and continuous beam of light.
Okay, that makes sense.
He just assumed that because everything in his world was always illuminated. But in this intense self-scrutiny, he realized something terrifying. The light source itself isn't reliable.
Flickers.
Exactly. Consciousness is actually particulate, discontinuous. It's a rapid-fire sequence of flashes, and our mind just stitches them together so flawlessly that we mistake it for a continuous flow.
Okay, let's unpack that, this idea of discontinuity, because it leads us right to the core concept of the manuscript, the interval. He talks about getting into this state of deliberate receptivity, just sitting in his study, watching dust motes in the sunlight. What did he see?
He saw the hairline crack in reality.
Wow.
He registered an infinitesimal but perceptible interval between the sensory experience, seeing the motes, and the cognitive understanding.
The moment of knowing he saw them.
Exactly.
That sounds absolutely exhausting. I mean, trying to pay attention to the silence between a thought and your awareness of the thought, I think my brain would just short circuit.
It is mentally arduous, yeah. But the revelation is crucial. The narrator realizes the interval isn't a malfunction. It's not a defect.
It's a feature.
It is the essential structure of self-awareness. It's the gap where the I becomes visible, not as a subject having experiences, but as the space in which that experience is processed.
This sort of grounds that feeling we all have sometimes, that little bit of distance from our own actions. He gives those unsettling but, very relatable examples.
He does. The feeling of hearing your own words a moment after you've spoken them.
Like a slight echo.
A slight echo, yeah. Or feeling your foot hit the ground just a split second before your brain registers the step.
So you, the conscious self, are always arriving a fraction of a second late to your own life.
You are a chronic latecomer to the present.
Okay, so if that's the problem, this perpetual distance, how does he ever bridge that gap? Where does the luminous interval actually come in?
Well, the problem becomes the key. When he stops trying to close the gap and just accepts the distance, that's when he experiences what he calls the visitation.
This is where the mundane present just completely transforms.
And the gap itself becomes luminous.
We're talking about the famous cup of tea moment, but on steroids. It becomes a portal through time.
It does. It's not just a memory of a past tea. It's a total complex experience. He calls it the vertical stack.
The vertical stack.
Yeah, it's a single taste or sensation that simultaneously contains every cup of tea, every context, and every version of himself that was there when he drank them.
It's not retrieval, it's fusion.
It's absolute simultaneity.
That is a powerful idea.
Yeah.
But if you're experiencing the past and present at the same time, are you just trapped in a loop? I mean, does that get rid of free will?
And that is the core philosophical tension, right? The luminous interval happens when that gap, the interval, is transformed from a barrier into a place you can dwell.
A dwelling place.
He talks about seeing a young woman on a bench, and she instantly brings to mind Mademoiselle Vinteuil, a ghost from his youth. And the key was realizing that these two moments seem to occupy the same ontological space.
Okay, what does that mean for us practically? Ontological space sounds like some heavy academic lifting.
It's just a way of saying that time stops being a road you're driving down. It becomes a field you inhabit all at once. The past isn't gone. It's just vibrating on a different temporal frequency that we normally tune out.
So the luminous interval is the moment you tune into those other frequencies.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you allow the provisional selves of your past to coexist with your present self.
So it's not just remembering, it's experiencing the past as concurrent. And that ability to hold all those layers together, that's the luminous part.
That's it. And this leads him into his true apprenticeship in what I came to think of as reading time.
Reading time.
Exactly. The practice of looking through surfaces. He realizes a room isn't just a blank space, it's a living document. It's a palimpsest.
Like an old manuscript where you can still see the erased text underneath.
Precisely. He sees ghostly furniture, old arrangements of light, all of it accessible if you just learn to adjust your temporal perception.
So if a room is just a stack of former rooms, is the self just a stack of former selves?
And that creates what he calls epistemological distance.
Mina.
The child he was, who believed in the surfaces of the world, is separated from the adult not just by years, but by an entirely different way of understanding reality.
So the different versions of himself, what he calls the provisional self, they're like different people.
Fundamentally distinct beings, yes.
Does this mean the self I was 5 years ago literally doesn't share my operating manual? Are they a stranger who just happens to have my memories?
That is precisely the terrifying conclusion he comes to.
Yep.
They share the same archive of events, but their interpretation, their emotional mapping of those events is completely different. Knowledge requires duration, not just information.
The narrator then takes this whole idea out into the world. He has this encounter with a photographer in what he calls the tertiary space.
Right, the abandoned outskirts of the city, places defined by decay.
And the photographer was focused on that interval between function and demolition, using this old-school mechanical eye to capture what time does to matter.
He wasn't photographing objects, he was photographing a process.
And his archive thesis is the real gut punch, especially for us today. He claims the archive does not preserve, it transforms.
It's chilling, isn't it? Documentation, by freezing a moment and pulling it out of the flow of lived time, kills the very life it promised to save.
It turns a moment of being into an artifact of having been.
For a generation obsessed with chronicling everything, every meal, every moment, this is a profound warning.
This leads to that pivotal choice he makes with the letters from Albertine's niece. She sends him his old letters.
And he chooses to destroy them unread.
Why?
He realizes that reading them would be forcing a meeting with a complete stranger who just happened to share his name. It would be imposing a past self onto his present life.
So by destroying them, he validates the idea that identity, the I we think we are, is an archival fiction.
It's a story we construct after the fact to link all these separate provisional selves. He chooses transformation over preservation.
That makes so much sense. If you try to perfectly preserve every past version of yourself, you become paralyzed.
Yes.
And the manuscript really drives that point home with that nightmare sequence, the library.
Ah, yes. The nightmare is a library where every single moment of every life is perfectly preserved and archived, perfect recall, infinite duration.
And he concludes this total documentation is hell.
It's hell, not because the moments are all painful, but because they are all equally present.
They're all demanding your attention at once.
Demanding attention, refusing to recede into necessary oblivion. You can't move forward if you're crushed under the weight of every second you've ever lived.
The past becomes too heavy.
Exactly. So the conclusion here is that consciousness actually requires a pruning of accumulated experience. Loss isn't a bug, it's a feature.
It requires what he calls a métier of forgetting, a skill in forgetting.
The ability to forget, or at least to transform memory, is what keeps us present and open to novelty. Perfect recall would, quite literally, be unlivable.
So we start with the capacity for forgetting being what we inherit, and we conclude that the practice of forgetting is what saves us. But then the narrator's pursuit of reading time, it kind of swings the pendulum too far, right?
It does. He becomes obsessed with looking through surfaces, and his servant, Celeste, gives him this necessary reality check.
What does she say?
She observes that he's lost the capacity for simple presence, just the ability to exist in the moment without all the echoes.
He's so focused on seeing the vertical stack of history that he can no longer see the surface right in front of him.
He loses the ability to just be.
And we see the bleakest version of this when he talks with Monsieur Charlot.
Right. Charles denies the passage of time entirely. He tries to treat the present as if it's continuous with the past, just reliving old glories over and over.
And his philosophy is devastating.
It is. Consciousness is a cruel joke of self-awareness that only brings repetition until he feels like a parody of oneself.
He's a prisoner of his own archives because he refuses to transform.
Exactly.
So the narrator is stuck between two failures. Charles's failure, which is denying the past is past, and his own, which is being so lost in the past's layers that he can't see the present. What's the synthesis? What does he ultimately realize about the interval?
His final shift is just acceptance. He realizes all his investigations were, in a way, a distraction.
A distraction from what?
From a simpler truth. The interval, that fundamental distance between living and knowing you've lived, it isn't a problem to be solved. It's not a gap to be closed.
It just is.
It is simply the description of the condition of being conscious at all. It's the texture of self-awareness.
So the ultimate lesson of the luminous interval isn't about capturing time.
But about inhabiting the lack of capture.
He stops trying to control it.
He just starts writing again. Not to extract some definitive meaning, but simply to record what is, knowing that transformation, the alchemy of forgetting, is inevitable.
And that's the whole point.
That is the point. The work remains unfinished because consciousness itself has no final sentence. He learned to move with time, not to capture it.
This whole journey into the structure of selfhood has been exhilarating. Let's quickly synthesize the core discoveries you've walked us through.
Okay. I'd say we covered 3 profound shifts.
Go for it.
First, that consciousness lives in the gaps in the interval, and it's inherently discontinuous.
Right.
Second, that memory isn't a reliable record. It's a constant transformative rewriting, and it demands that métier of forgetting to stop us from being paralyzed by the past.
And the third?
And third, that identity is an archival fiction. It's a story we build retrospectively to link together a succession of separate, necessary, provisional selves.
Okay, so a final thought for our listeners. If the narrator's distance is the fundamental condition of our existence, that we're always arriving a moment late at our own lives, what does it mean for you to try and achieve presence? Is the goal ever really to eliminate the gap? Or is the true challenge to learn to inhabit that approximate space beautifully?
And I think the value of human consciousness lies not in its ability to achieve perfect recall, but in the mercy of its imperfection. We can't capture time. We can only inhabit it approximately, allowing ourselves to become someone other than who we were a moment ago.
So are you busy protecting your past self, or are you allowing yourself to transform?
That is the question to mull over until the next deep dive.